Hello and welcome to this guide to getting started with the Geodata Investigator. Today we're going to take a look at how we can make really nice, useful plots in the GDI. So maybe you're like me and bored of boring plots like so, but fortunately we can lighten up the world with the GDI and create something a bit more meaningful. So let's take a look at how we can do this. So in Petrel I have created a simple investigation with a couple different data sets with some well logs and a facies interpretation. And I'm going to start by taking you through one of the simplest windows, which is the histogram window here. So just to mention, the histogram is a measure of frequency of the continuous data, where it's divided into different bins, which are represented by these bars here. So obviously the number of bins you select is important to controlling the display of this graph. And as a rule of thumb, we should make sure that the bins encompass the full range of data and that they don't change the shape of the graph here too much. So if I look here, for example, in the axis settings, I could, for example, choose to divide this into more bins, like, for example, 100, but we can see that if I drop it down to 50, the shape of the graph remains largely the same, so I know that 50 is a sufficient number of bins to accurately describe this data. The next thing that can be useful with the histogram is to maybe color by one of the properties. So at the moment I'm displaying porosity, so I should color by porosity, and here I can get a nice visual representation, and I can also easily add a legend here using the color scale icon at the top, just to give some extra context to my graph. In addition to the properties, I can also color by my discrete data, so in this case my facies, where again it's nice to add a quick legend as a description to the graph to know what the colors actually represent, and maybe I can also just focus in on a couple of different facies that I want to look at here. So finally, one nice other thing we can do is when looking at two sets of data here, we could split them easily into non-separate bars, so you can compare these two populations together, or we can also choose to switch it to lines where we can see the overlap of the two data sets. In addition, the histogram also gives you the option to display various cumulative distribution functions for your data. So you can, for example, get your P90 and P75 for porosity for your sand here. Next I want to talk you through the crossplot window in the GDI, which is more looking at pairs of continuous data together. So the crossplot can be really useful for a number of reasons, because it can give you a sense of overview of the relationship between the two variables here, and it's important to think about that in a number of ways here. So first is the direction of the data between the two dimensions. Is it going to be positive, increasing, or negative, decreasing? So does porosity increase with permeability or decrease? Then it's also important to think about the data in terms of strength. So that means how tightly clustered is the data together across the two different dimensions. And finally, also the shape of the data. So do you have like a linear trend which increases in a straight line, or do you have something more complicated? Finally, the crossplot can also be useful for identifying outliers to the data, which may give you some interesting results. So again, here I want to show you how we can make this a little bit more useful by, again, coloring by some of the data, like for example gamma ray here, and then adding a quick legend on the side to label the graph. We can also change, for example, the symbol size and color by changing the color here or the symbol. So here we can make a box with a new size to make it slightly more visible. And we can also display additional data sets and choose a maybe different symbol and size for this one, like so. So now we can see it's maybe a little bit difficult to distinguish these two data sets just on visibility alone. So that's where we have the option to introduce our highlighter tool, where we can highlight selected data as part of a background. And this applies for the well data that you select, but also the various discrete data that you choose. Finally, I want to show you that it's possible to bring all this together, both the histograms and the crossplots, by making use of the blueback matrix window, which can give you a combination of both elements we previously showed across all the different dimensions. So here again I have all the same options to color the data and symbol the data based on my various options. Again, I can add my legends here if I want for color or for facies, for example, and make some nice plots together here. Finally, this might be something we want to save and share with others, so we can easily copy here to a EMF into the clipboard and bring this into PowerPoint like so, and then we have a really good high resolution copy of our nice crossplot here from the GDI. So thanks for listening, and hopefully you can find these options easily in the GDI. Thanks.